Morning, everybody. In case you don't know, David Shaw, head football coach, Stanford University. Nice to see you. Excited about where we are. I think talking about this year, you start with how we finished last year. Most injuries we've had, including we believe, the top running back in America. Had a lot of things we had to battle, but our guys never stopped fighting. After losing 4 to 5 games in the middle of the year, we had great leadership, we had great effort, we exhibited high character, and came back and finished the year on 4 straight wins, which says a lot about our team, says a lot about our coaches, says a lot about our mentality. So this year, we got a lot of guys coming back. Really excited about the guys we have coming back. Got a bunch of guys on a bunch of different watch lists. One of our top quarterbacks in America, tight ends, corner, offensive lineman, kicker, et cetera. Got great leadership on our outside linebacker positions. So I think we have a lot of guys that are coming back with high expectations. At the same time, we've got a lot of guys that are young, a lot of guys that are on our team that haven't played big roles, that we need them to step up and play big roles. And with some young guys coming in, they're going to battle for playing time as well. So I think from the very beginning, early in the year, great way to start the year against Northwestern, a tough physical team that was in the Big Ten championship game. We're going to know about ourselves right off the bat. So I think our guys have had a great summer, and now we're headed towards a great training camp to prepare ourselves for a very difficult schedule and challenge that I believe that we'll be up to. So with us, we brought our quarterback, KJ Costello, to your back, behind you to your left, and fifth-year senior outside linebacker, Casey Toohill, back behind you to your right. So we'll go with questions when you're ready.
All right, feel free to gather around the coach or the student athletes for additional questions.
Coach,
hey.
You were pretty short-handed there in spring. Going into fall camp, are there any notable guys not ready to go at the start?
I think we'll be pretty close to full speed. Maybe a couple of guys, maybe the first few days. But for the most part, I think we're looking good as far as our guys that had postseason surgeries. I think we were very conservative with a lot of our guys that maybe could have been in that second session, that we just didn't want to risk it. Being shorthanded the whole year, we handled being shorthanded in spring. A lot of guys got a lot of reps, though, in spring that needed it. But I think going into training camp, I think we'll be pretty close to full go.
Walker and Curtis are okay?
Yeah. Walker, I think, is getting a full clearance very soon. If not, doesn't have it sometime this week. Pretty much is doing everything right now. Curtis has been full go in everything that we've done. So excited about where those guys are, as well as the health of our whole football team. The ceiling for KJ is very high. I think last year he played at a high level. In spurts, he looked as good as anybody in America playing the position of quarterback. Now it's about taking that next step, and not just about making more great plays, but making fewer bad plays, right? And really fine-tuning his efforts every single week to be consistently great, and not great sometimes and good sometimes, but consistently great. I think he's prepared for that. I think he's trained for it. The opportunity to leave, but I think he knew himself there's another 10 to 15% that he can really reach by coming back and hopefully leading this team to a great season and leading himself to a great season as well.
How hard is it to take that next step, or what does he need to do?
And a lot of people say the last step that you take at this position in his career is the hardest, because it's not about making huge gains. There are a ton of tiny games, and challenged him to go back and look at all the interceptions from last year. Interceptions are going to happen, but how do we avoid those? How do we reduce that number? How do we go, a kid who had a great year, in the upper 60%, so how do we get from 65% to 70% completion? That's huge. That's a few more completions each game over incompletions. ball placement, timing, accuracy, checkdowns, all those things. And at the same time, being a better running football team to take some pressure off of the passing game, have some more second and mediums where we can run it or throw it, and continue to up the efficiency of our entire offense.
Injuries happen to everybody, but I'm just kind of curious from your point of view, how do you evaluate a training staff and a strength and conditioning staff, given that everyone's going to have to deal with injuries at some point? How do you evaluate those guys over the course of a season?
Well, I think it's continual during the course of the year. What are we doing? How are we doing? Can we do some things better? And at the end of the year, looking at it holistically, okay, what did we do last year differently? And to a certain degree, last year, it was just football. I think it's legitimate football injuries, right? Sprained ankles, bruised shoulders. Some of those things are unavoidable. A couple of knee injuries. We still didn't have a lot of soft tissue things where you look at it and say, okay, we have so many hamstrings, we need to change this. There were legitimate football injuries, so I think being one of the healthiest teams in America for probably a decade, it was kind of our turn. We just had a lot of things happen to us. So, but though in a preparation for this year, making sure that we are on top of all of our guys' issues, make sure our guys understand, like when something's bothering you, let us know right off the bat. Don't let us know after 3 weeks where it's been bugging you, where now maybe you miss a game or we have to do something, intervention, more so than we could have 3 weeks ago when it first started bothering you. So educating our guys how to take better care of themselves, how can we give them the best care that we can, reduce the number of injuries, but then also when guys do get injured, getting them back as soon as prudent to get them back healthy on the field. So I think we've looked at a lot of different things. We have a new head athletic trainer. We're very excited about both head for the entire athletic department, but also head for football. We're all have gotten on the same page with our strength staff and our strength staff, rehab experts. So I think we're building a nice, tight circle that our players can come every single day and depend on.
Coach, from your national television experiences, what's the perception of the Pac-12 that you get from talking to these other people around the country?
I think it varies. The people who know football and that watch football, they know how competitive this conference is. There are not a lot of conferences out there that can legitimately look up and say more than half of their conference has a chance to win the conference. And those teams in the quote-unquote middle of our conference, any of them can beat anybody at the top of the conference. I think, you look at a team like Cal that proves that every single week where no one picks them to be at the top, but everybody in the conference knows Cal has made a steady progression. They've gotten better and better every single year, and they are a dangerous football team that you could look up and they could be fighting for the Pac-12 championship. So the people that know football know how deep and how difficult this conference is. The people that only want to look in two spots in the SEC and the Big Ten footprint, you can't win them over anyway because they're not paying attention to the scope of college football. But I think the people that know the sport and understand the sport, there's a lot of good football teams out here. I mean, just look at the North between Stanford and Washington State and Oregon, what they've been able to do, and a resurgent Cal team. And you look at the South and what Utah's been able to do and all the guys they have coming back. USC has retooled and rebuilt. I trust Chip Kelly and what they're going to do down there at UCLA. You saw what Herm Edwards was able to do and surprised everybody at Arizona State. There's a lot of talent at Arizona. A lot of people aren't talking about it. People have forgotten about this monster named Tate that's still down there, that when he's healthy, he's as good as anybody in college football. You look at the scope of our conference, it is scary every single week. So the people that understand it, understand how deep and how good this conference is. Yeah, it's been tough, and I think the committee every year has gotten it right, understandably. I think our conference is a tough conference to win. I think and I've said this for years. I think the fact that we play 9 conference games and a tough out-of-conference schedule means that what happened to us in 2015 is going to happen, which is you're on a hellacious run, and you, after 4 conference games, you get that Oregon game, and you just can't quite finish it. And then the same thing happened in Washington. They're on a great run, and they get Stanford on a short week on a Friday night, and we find a way to edge them out and win the game. Those things happen in our conference. They don't necessarily happen in other conferences because they don't play 4 conference games in a row because they have 8 conference games. So they'll play 3 conference games in a row, then a non-conference game, or 3 conference games in a row and a bye. So those schedules sometimes are more manageable. Our schedules are tough, and it's hard week in and week out to know that you're going to play sometimes, like USC did a couple of years ago, 7 straight conference games without a bye. That's brutal, absolutely brutal. But it's our challenge.
With the blindside rule change, how much of that, is there any concern that you have that that is really fundamentally changing for some players, especially offensive linemen on cutbacks, that really everything that they've ever been taught instinctually, and that you could argue you could be putting those players in, not you personally, but the rule could be putting those players in jeopardy if they are unable to block in that manner.
Absolutely. And those that cannot adhere to the rules can't play. Don't care. If you can't make the rules, you can't change and adjust to the rules and make this game as safe as possible. Most guys understand there is a brotherhood for anybody who plays football, and I use the word brotherhood loosely because there are a lot of young ladies that are playing football as well, growing up. But there's a commonality that you feel, and there's a respect I believe that needs to have. And if the ball's going that way, and I'm coming to block you, and you're not looking, I need to respect you as a human being, as a football player. Say, I'm going to block you, but I'm not going to try to injure you. So we've talked about having targeting as a potential for those peel back blocks as well, for kickoff returns, punt returns, interception returns, etc. I can come and block you without injuring you. I can come shield you. I can come use my hands and put my hands on you. The biggest thing in those blocks is all I have to do is interrupt your stride. All I have to do is nudge you and kick you off stride so you can't catch up to the guy who has the ball. So it's about teaching the guy and understanding those guys that there are plenty of opportunities for contact in football. I mean, every play there's going to be contact, there's going to be physical contact. But let's take those hellacious hits out of the game. Let's take those potential career-ending hits out of the game. Let's take those concussion hits out of the football game where it can still be fast, it can still be physical, but more guys are staying healthy.
Your schedule currently has 9 league games, which is with Stanford. There's really more like 10 league games. How would you feel if the conference went back to 8 games where you had no more than 4 road games and 4 home games? And I realize that probably would impact your recruiting in California, but I would like your thoughts on that.
I've been consistent here. I'm a proponent for universally having the same scheduling practices. So if that means the SEC and other conferences go to 9 conference games like us, great. If those don't change and we go back to 8, then I say great. So once we started this playoff, we've had this conversation so many times, we need to have some uniformity. It's the only way that makes sense. And I brought up USC not going to the college football playoff after winning our conference, and Alabama not winning their conference going to the playoff. Alabama was good enough, and the committee picked them for all the right reasons to go. But when you compare the schedules, the schedules didn't compare. USC played 9 conference games and Notre Dame and didn't have a bye. That was a very, very tough and difficult schedule that they navigated and did a great job navigating, win the Pac-12 championship, but didn't get a chance to go to the playoff. So, but you couldn't really compare the schedules. You can look and say, okay, this team's better, this team could go. But we were trying to get to a point where we can truly evaluate the schedules and look at teams uniformly. We haven't been able to do that. So at some point, I do believe we need to have more scheduling uniformity.
With that being the case, do you get a sense when you talk with your coaches that there is possible expansion coming with the playoff?
Once again, I'll be consistent with myself. And I've said to everybody, Mr. Hancock included, over the years, there's no way we stay at 4. From the day that we announced that there's going to be a 14 playoff, I said, that's awesome, that's great, that's what we need until we get to 8. We got to start someplace, we're starting at 4. Because what happens, you have 5 power conferences, or Power 5 conferences, and 4 spots, and some independents. There's always going to be, and a group of 5 team that comes up. It's too restrictive. You're not guaranteed that you're getting the 4 best teams. I think we've done the best job we can every single year. I think the right 4 teams have gone every single year. The committee's been awesome. But every single year there's 1, 2, and sometimes 3 teams that raise their hand and have a legitimate case to be included in the playoff. And the only way that I think that you truly get it right is to have 8 teams at the end of the year battle for that national championship.
Have you talked with Larry and the presidents that you know about that?
For me, I'm not pushing it. I don't have the power to push it. All I've been saying is I've been around long enough to know it's going to happen, right? And we started with 64 teams, and we went to 65, then went to 68, and then went to 69. we can go from 4 to 8. Don't talk about time. Don't talk about any of those things. It doesn't matter. We can make it work and have an 18 playoff that I think truly, and some years I think you'll have probably 7, and maybe that 8th one, maybe or maybe not, deserves to be in there, but we would rather have that than exclude teams that belong in that playoff. So I believe an 18 playoff at some point in time is going to happen. I think it's going to be the best thing for college football.
Staying on the schedule tangent, pros, cons of always playing USC first conference game of the year, in your opinion?
Personally, I love it.
Okay.
I love it. I think it's a rivalry. It's funny, you ask our team who our biggest rival is, and some will say Cal, and some will say USC, and some will say Oregon, and some will say Washington, and some will say Notre Dame. But USC is one of those games I think that the USC fan base loves the rivalry. We love the rivalry. When we were becoming the Pac-12 North and South and deciding how we're going to schedule, I think the 4 of us, Stanford, Cal, and USC and UCLA, said, you know what? We think it would be great to continue to play each other. Some people have fallen off of that, but for me personally, I think it's been a positive for both teams. I think it's been big games. I think we've been using each other to measure ourselves against early in each year. I think our games have been exciting every year.
And a quick follow-up, being the second game of the year, what challenges does the USC and the new air raid offense present to you, considering their skill level position?
You know, and there's still the different versions of the air raid, and so it'll be interesting to see their version that they bring to the table in the Pac-12. And it'll be different than what Mike Leach does up at Washington State. I know they have the talent, and they have guys that get the ball too, so that's what's going to be really interesting and a challenge for us. I really like our secondary, but that's going to be a heck of a matchup early in the year between their passing game and our pass defense game.
David, you've seen Utah's evolution in the league. What does it say for them to be picked to win the conference this year?
I think it's well-deserved. I think it's great that they're not on the schedule for us this year. They've got a lot of guys coming back. I think they've got an unbelievable
We have 3 minutes
stout
remaining with
defense.
Stanford. 3 minutes.
That front 7 is difficult. They've got length and athleticism in the secondary. And then bringing a new offensive coordinator who I can't say that I know very well, but I've watched him over the years because he's been with one of my good friends, Derek Mason, at Vanderbilt. I think that style of offense is going to fit very well with Kyle's philosophy and the personnel that they have. So I think that's going to be a great combination. I think they're going to be a tough team to beat all year.
Have you been able to look at the negotiating report and the conference put together?
Yes. I thought it was very well done. I think it was very honest and real, and even to the point of some of the things that we already do well and reaffirming that we do those things well, and also looking at some areas that we can improve and challenging our leadership to make those improvements, to continue to work with the coaches and have a great working relationship with our coaches. At the same time, have accountability to our public and our fan bases, and to be as consistent as they can be and dependable week in and week out.
Coach, the running back is still the center of a lot of college offenses. That's less and less the case in the NFL. Why do you think there's a difference between the two levels as far as how running backs are?
So that's a great question. I think the era of quarterbacks in the NFL has been going on for a while, and I think it's gotten even more so. When you look at the rules changes and the pass interference rules and the benefits of throwing the ball more than running the ball. And I was at the Baltimore Ravens, and we had Jamal Lewis, and he rushed for 2,000 yards, and it was awesome. And then the next year, he was on injured reserve. So you're looking at having great running backs and not running them into the ground, and knowing that these guys take a toll. I mean, these meta-humans that are playing on the NFL level, they're not like you and I. To run the ball consistently in the NFL is a tough thing, so you want to have multiple running backs. So I think it's not devalued the running back position, but lets you know that you need to have multiple running backs. But it's almost more advantageous to throw the ball more, especially if you've got a quarterback, you've got a top-level quarterback and some receivers, more yards, more defensive pass interference calls, more opportunities to score.
Given how hard it is for running backs to get that second contract now, recently, kind of the way they want to discourage a kid from playing running back and wanting to play football long term, if you're like debating between running back and corner, running back and safety.
I would never. I would always try to encourage a guy to play the position that he plays the best. I remember Jabril Peppers recruiting Jabril Peppers, who I thought was a phenom. I still think he's a phenom, a great athlete, and could have been one of those guys who was going to be an All-American at running back. And talking to him, and he was a wise beyond his years at 17 in high school. He said, Coach, I want to play this game for a long time. I think I can play longer playing defensive back than I can playing running back. And he said, although I think I can play running back, but I really want to play on the defense side. So, of course, I tried to get him to play both ways at Stanford. It didn't work. So some of those guys, if they have the ability to play both, some of those guys are looking towards that position. But you've got a guy like Christian McCaffrey, very similar, just a freak show athlete, could have been an All-American corner, All-American nickel, All-American safety, anything would have been All-American. But he was one of those guys, he loves to have the ball in his hands. He loves to run the ball. That's his mental and emotional makeup. Yes, he can line up a receiver and catch the ball, but he also likes to run that ball between the tackles. So the mentality they have combined with their physical traits, I think, should lead them towards a position that's best for them.
How big of an emphasis has it been for you and your team this offseason to reestablish the traditional Stanford dominant running game that some teams have?
We've covered it a few times. The focal point of our offense for years has been the guys up front. There's a reason why when you walk into our locker room, the first two things you see on your left is a picture of the offensive line, on the right is a picture of the front seven. Our guys know this is where football begins, and this is where we need to be great. If we want to win conference championships and get to the playoff and try to win a national championship, it has to start there. Physically, mentally, and emotionally, that's where football begins. So for us, we have to run the ball better. We have to protect the passer better. We had some injuries last year, hopefully with a lot of guys that have recuperated, ready to play their best football up front for us. I wouldn't say anything surprised me. I was very pleased how thorough it was and how specific it was in areas for improvement. Challenges that I know, starting with Larry Scott, our leadership's up to.
All right, that'll conclude the session with Stanford. Again, the coach and student athletes will be available for additional one-on-one during the lunch hour.
Not just here, but nationally, that we are getting great officiating, that we have proper lines of communication, that we are influencing games in the proper way, in the right way. That combination of what we do on the field and how our fans feel about the games that are played, I think, has done that report is going to do a good job of bridging that gap.